My biggest takeaway podcast.
Welcome back to My Biggest Takeaway podcast. I have my business partner and great friend, Mr. Bakker Shields. Baker, welcome to the show, brother.
What's up, dude? I'm happy to finally make an appearance. I've been
That's
waiting on
right.
this, waiting on the invite.
Yeah, it's funny that the people closest to you don't think about.
Yeah, yeah,
That's essentially what happened. And
yeah,
like Paula hasn't been on, you haven't been on. None of my employees or people that I've worked with in the past that I have the best relationships with. It's like, let me get some strangers on here. Let me get some, clients or somebody that I know or whatever. So it's just funny how it works out. But you know me,
I think I
I'm
lost
like
you.
the
Can you hear
worst.
me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I lost you for a little bit, or at least on my end, it cut out for a while.
Okay. We might do that. But just keep rolling.
Okay.
But you know how it goes. Like, I'm not the best relationship building person. We've talked about this. It's like, hey, I know my lane, I know your lane. And unfortunately, intentions don't trump actions. At least that's what I'm
Yeah.
told often. So I'm trying to work on my actions, not always my intentions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no, it's we're both super busy dudes and got a lot of stuff going on. I mean, we're trying to grow this company, it's a different format than either of us have ever been in, and being in the SaaS world, it's not easy. I was talking to somebody about it today. It's just the problems that you encounter, that people have figured it out before you.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like, that people have done this, gone this route before, and obviously built huge companies out of it, but you haven't, I haven't. So we're
mhm.
kind of encountering all these problems and leaning on the people that we can lean on and leaning on the resources that we can lean on, but we're trying to overcome them one step at a time and figure it out for ourselves. So it's been fun so far though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always like to make the statement like, you don't know what you don't know. And so when somebody's building something for the first time or they're trying to get to that next level, I heard Rob Bailey say this yesterday, and I'm going to butcher it a little bit here. But basically, there's levels to everything, right? And if we say, I don't know how, then it's just going to beat us. But if we say, if I can just figure out this problem, then you just put another tool in your tool belt. And I thought that was a pretty cool concept
Yeah.
because I feel like that's one thing that I've done is, which I mean, I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to try everything until I figure it out. And I might lose all of them, but I'm going to still show up the next day and try to make it happen. And I feel like a lot of people
Yeah.
in business quit too soon because it didn't work, so they quit. Right? That's why people stop dieting. It's like, well, I tried the keto and I didn't like it, so I quit my entire diet journey. It's like, no, you just got to try something else that works best for you, right?
Yeah.
So and this is really, I think, really great point to segue both fitness and business. Is the ones that win are the ones that don't quit. It's not that those people didn't have problems. It's not that they didn't face adversity. It's just they just kept making adjustments and they kept making changes until it worked for them. And so when we have those clients come on that we do something and hey, it didn't work, but they're not like, hey, like you guys suck. It's like, no, I see what we're trying to do. What else can we do? And let's put that solution into play instead of always talking about the problems because the problems are never going to go away. The solutions just have to become greater, right? And the more money you make, the harder the solutions become. So,
Yep. Yeah, and the higher level problems that you encounter too. I mean, it's the problems that we encountered trying to get past 10K or 20K or 30K or 40K a month are not the same problems that we have now, right? It's a different, at each new level, the inclination is to like get rid of everything that you were previously doing and do a bunch of new things. But in
yep.
reality, what you have to be able to do is continue doing those things and add on new sets of knowledge, like you're talking about, new tasks, new employees that are going to help you get to that next level, dealing with these higher level problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a lot of what we've kind of tried to do inside the business in general, is just not only looking at how can we keep doing what we were doing at a high level or even a higher level, but how can we add the pieces that we really need to go to the next one. So that's been kind of the fun part about building it, is it's definitely never boring, say that much.
Yeah, and I think that complacency comes whenever it does get boring. And that's why
Yeah.
you see successful people like stop something and then just go to something else. Because
Hmm.
they lost that the problem solving inside of them. Right? It's not often you're
For
like, I
sure.
made it, and then you're just like, all right, I'm just going to cash out and do nothing. It's
Yeah.
like I just need to find another problem to solve and fix.
Yeah.
What's really cool about what we do, though, is since we work with coaches, like every day, new people, it's like it's always a new problem.
Hmm.
So that
Yeah.
that that does make it fun. Like I just had a call and did a whole whiteboard session with Adrian Stover going over ads, and it was fun, even though I know it all. Let me reword that. I don't know it all. Talking about setting up ad structure, right?
Yeah.
And then what we do or what is it we suggest. And for them being all new and seeing the problems in which they have and then giving those solutions and opening up their eye to see more than just like ad, it's like, no, there's so much more to that. So it's really cool to work with clients and show them how they can solve their problems that they're running into, whether it be through funnels, sales calls, ads, appointment setting, calendar, people not showing up, et cetera, et cetera. Because every business is different, even though they're all the same.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it definitely stays novel. And same thing on my calls too, is I'm working with, our top tier kind of coaches that are wanting our highest level of one-on-one attention, and in those conversations, there's always something new that somebody's encountering. There's always a new problem, just like within our own business. And so you definitely get to continuously be able to innovate, but that's also where the best ideas come from. And I think one of the things that I definitely don't take for granted in terms of our business model is, with both of us getting to talk to so many coaches on a daily basis, we definitely have a very good finger on the pulse of the industry as a whole, and where the industry is headed, I feel like, at any given time. So that, I think, helps us to understand, just at a very deep level, what these coaches are encountering, what they're facing day to day, and what are the things that they kind of need in order to get over these obstacles that they all encounter at some way, and at some point in time. I mean, it's just kind of inevitable.
let's talk about 2024 and where the industry is actually headed. And I bring this up because I'm a person that clicks on ads. I'm always wanting to learn and see how other people are doing things, etc. Right? Obviously, running our own, and I see more ads than I ever have before for, let's say, business coaching.
Yep.
And they're all basically are talking about the same things. And it's like, well, who do you trust? And I think the real question boils down to is, who do I believe and who is selling me? Do I think that every person can help you? Absolutely. Right? But it's, who do you, I mean, because that makes it to where it's like, okay, so the best ad and the best salesman gets the client, not the person that you actually believe the most,
Yep.
but the one that convinced you this is what it is that you need to put into play for your business. Because do I run ads? Do I not run ads? Do I do a funnel? Do I do cold DMs? Like, do I do VSL? Do I do webinars? Like, there's so many different strategies. And I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong way. I think there's an order of operations which you should follow. But it really comes down to
Mm-hmm.
that belief. And I think that falls into fitness as well. Cause like obviously coaches are a dime a dozen. But like, who do you align with and who do you believe? In your mind, trying to get more belief from your consumers, what are a few things that you would suggest that coaches should do, and the coaches that are most successful, what are they doing to instill that belief in people?
Yeah, I'm always somebody that goes back to psychology, right? You've got to understand on a very deep psychological level the person that you're trying to attract. Jared Hamilton, I know you've had him on. I've had him on mine as well, my podcast, that is. he is somebody who just understands his client in a way that most people never really get to. And we've got a few people like that. But if you really know inside and out your client on a deep, personal, intimate level, you can speak to them and you can connect with them on a level that most coaches out there in the market are not going to be able to. Right? Like Jared averages like a 60 or 70% open rate on his emails. And he's put a lot of work into that craft, by the way. He writes daily emails to all of his people. He's taken multiple courses on copywriting. He's got a copywriting coach that reviews his own copy with him every single week. So he does a lot of work in there. It's not just all kind of innate, like his ability, but he also is really, really good at it. And he's got like I was looking through one of his flows today. He's got like a 10 or 16% click rate on his emails. Click rate. Which
for those that don't know, that is insane. The average email open rate is 20%, Jared 60 plus. And then with the click rate, its average is 1.75. So the fact that he's that high, like, is astonishing in so many facets.
Yeah. It's nuts. And so that's one way to kind of hyper connect and build that trust, I think, is if you can just speak their language in a way that it just automatically connects with them. Another way that I think is more accessible, right? Because you do have to put in the time, you do have to put in the effort. It takes a while to build that type of connection psychologically with your client, unless they are literally you, right? Like if you or me were talking to busy professional entrepreneurial men, that's a lot easier for us to do than if we were talking to busy moms. You know, if we were talking to busy moms, we got to learn a lot more about busy moms to be able to speak that language. And even then, it's going to be harder for us to connect. So we have to really get good at that copywriting. But the other way, and Paul is really big on this, I think it's very important, is you've got to walk the walk. Okay, you've got to, if you want to accelerate somebody's trust, they have to be seeing that you're out here doing the things that you're preaching for them to do. Right? Eating healthy. You know, you always talk about the connection between your fitness and your business. Eating healthy and showing that you're doing that, showing why you're doing it, showing recipes, showing meals, working out hard, showing why you're doing it, what you're doing. You know, if you have like a journey that you are personally on, that also shows people that you're not just like sitting at their end goal, just effortlessly staying there in a way that's just not relatable for the average human. Right? You see these coaches that just stay like stage lean all year long, all the time, and they just are, you know, for lack of a better word, a lot of times they are models, you know, essentially out there on Instagram or TikTok or wherever. And that is great to follow for the aesthetics portion of it, but it also doesn't connect with somebody on a deep level that's trying to engage in their own journey, because for me, it's like, I have so far to go to get to that. Right. As the client. But if you can see them engaging in even if it's just like a bulk and a cut, and maybe they're getting ready for a competition, like you can see them actively engaging in the day-to-day work to get to someplace, that's a little bit more easy to latch onto in a personal level and connect with, so that you can actually reach out to them. So I think in a sea of people that are trying, like everybody's trying to connect, everybody's trying to stand out, I think the two things that you can do to accelerate that nurture and really get close and connected to your clients is understand them on a deep psychological level and be engaged in a journey of your own that people can follow along with. I think those are kind of my two big things. What about you? What do you think?
Well, based on what you kind of said, this picture was painted in my mind. And it's, I think great coaches are actually just great leaders, and you have to lead by example, as you stated. Think about it like this, right? For those that are listening, picture the football coach that's 50 pounds overweight, the short shorts, tight shirt, stomach's hanging over their belt, and you're making you run sprints. And they're saying, like, you can run harder, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, and basically just talking down to you, right? And you go, well, you couldn't fucking do this. And that's what you're muttering to yourself as he's making you sprint, as he's saying that you got more in the tank, as he's saying that you're not putting in 100% effort, as he's just trying to get you to become your best self, right? But also look at the example though. What if that coach was in shape? It feels different when David Goggs talks to you than somebody that's 50 pounds overweight because he walks the walk. And it makes you go,
Yeah.
yeah, I can do this. It doesn't make you resent because he's eating the cheeseburger and the ding dongs while you're running up and down the field. David is there running it with you or already actually did his running. So it feels different from a leader standpoint from than only just being that coach or authority standpoint. Just because you got a whistle doesn't mean I respect you, right? So I think that's a really good tie-in to great coaches are also great leaders. And the best leaders are not the ones that anoint themselves as a leader, but that are selected by their peers to be the leader. And the only way that happens is through you do this better than me, so I'm going to follow you.
Mm-hmm. And it's not enough just to be there, right? Like you could be doing all the work behind the scenes to look like that model that you look like, but if no one sees it on social, if no one knows that you're doing those things, if you just do it and then just post the results of it, that doesn't connect in the same way as if you were to actively be on that journey and actively share that. Just that simple little reframe right there can completely change how you're perceived.
Instagram's got to eat first.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
The workout
Something
didn't
I'm trying to
happen
get
if you
better
didn't
at.
post about it, right?
Exactly. And calories don't count either.
That's right. So I think one thing that I think that's really important for belief is content. A lot of coaches I find are really great coaches, but they never show it. So it goes back to saying like, hey, if you never work out, then I have to assume that you work out when you never want anybody to assume anything. So we want to show them everything. And so I don't know how smart you are until you tell me how smart you are. And you can't tell me how smart you are if you don't put out content about things that you can educate me on. And I've got a lot of, old school people that I've talked to. They're like, I'm not going to give away my stuff for free. And I'm like, then you're going to stay broke.
Yeah.
Like you got to show something. My assumption is that you know what you're talking about. Like, what is that? You can't assume anything. You got to show it to me. Everyone else is. Why aren't you? You're just so great that you're not going to show it. No, dude, you got to put it out there. And so I think the more content you put out that's going to educate people, the better. And no one's going to buy from you until they buy into you. I think that also boils down to the belief is that you're not just a leader, you're not just a coach, you're not just an educator, but you're also a person. That's why the first post I like for coaches to put inside their Instagram page, like the first pinned post, is you and the family photo. I need to know who you are, your why, and what you stand for. I need to know if you're a father. I need to know if you're a mother. Like, I need to know who you are on an intimate level because no one gives money to strangers.
Yep.
So the more we can build that relationship, I think that's going to help build that belief of like, I believe
I think
in
it comes
Jared
down to
and what he stands for. I believe in Baker and what he does.
For sure. I think it comes down to you got to give away the information, you got to sell the implementation. And a lot of coaches, when you put it in kind of like a nice little package like that, that's a little bit easier way to understand it. But a lot of coaches are super. We get the question weekly, if not daily, between you, me, Felicity, Paula, everybody involved in AR now, with our team about like I don't want to give away too much. Like how much should I give away in this challenge? They're only paying me $100, and that's like the reality is like, is your end goal to just get $100 from that person? Right? Is your end goal to just get their email and phone number? Is your own goal just to get them to follow you? No, your end goal is to get them into whatever your flagship offer is, right? So that you can actually help them on the deepest level that you can possibly offer, but also get paid well for your time and effort and knowledge that you've invested into not only developing yourself, but being able to develop this person. So if you have to be thinking about that end goal in mind, and the reality is if you're not able to give away the information or willing to do that, like you said, so many other people are doing it for free, and they can find all of it on Google for free. They can find it all on ChatGPT for free. So if you're not willing to connect to that person and give out the information, then they don't need the implementation from you. They're not going to, if it's between you and another coach that's giving all this stuff away for free, they're going to be wondering in their head, I'm getting so much value from this other coach, paying them. I can't even imagine what that's going to be worth. Can't even imagine what I'm going to get on the inside. And that's what you want people to think. Hormozy always says that quote of, make your free shit better than everyone else's paid shit. And that's really what you should shoot for. We're seeing that more and more and more with kind of the rise of school and community-based platforms, and the rise of all these lead magnets that everyone's kind of pumping out now. It's the most important thing is if give away the information and then sell the implementation. And it's what it comes down to in business in general.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. It's like one of the videos that we have whenever somebody schedules a call with us. I'm just going to send you over how to optimize your bio. Why? Because you need to do that regardless. So no matter who you work with, whether you use our system and process or somebody else's, or use us for mentor or somebody else, like there's foundations in which you need to do regardless. And I pride myself in that video being one of the best videos that's free on the internet. And I say that because it actually gets down to the nitty gritty versus just like, yeah, so just put some transformations and like fix your bio and do this. It's like, I need you to understand like the why, not just the what. And that's where that education comes in when coaches are putting out that free stuff, is if you can get somebody to understand the why they need to do these certain things, then they're going to inquire more to work with you versus just the what. Because it shows that you actually know what you're talking about versus just telling somebody to eat chicken. It's like, no, I don't want you to eat chicken. I want you to eat protein. So if you can like really dial in on I like to think on the fundamental level, because like, you can Google right now how to lose weight. You'll get 1.2 million articles and they all work. And then why is 70% of people overweight? Like it's because they don't have the implementation. They have all the education they could possibly want, but it's the accountability.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the implementation of that program for them that's going to make them adhere to the program. Yep. So you've been in a few different businesses now. For those that don't know anything about you, for all the new listeners that are seeing who you are and what it is you do, I want to talk about the mistakes, not the wins. Because everybody likes to talk about the wins and what they've been successful with. I want to talk about the shit that we fucking sucked at.
Yeah, I got a lot of those.
What's the first one that comes to mind?
I would say the one that probably hurt the most was that I think of quite often was ending up my senior year of college. I got approached by or put in a group chat with some guys. So you probably don't even know this about me. I worked in a software startup like super early on in college, like my sophomore year. Yeah, sophomore year of college. I randomly I had to get a job for the first time, right? Because parents didn't pay for any college. Got there and I lived off my graduation money for a little bit, and then kind of like reality hit, and I was like, okay, I gotta like find something. Yeah. So I got a job at Sam's Club, and I was there for like my first week, and I was like, I'm not doing this shit for like, this is not, it just does not feel like it's worth any type of paycheck for me. So I started hitting like the little internship forums that the college had to try and figure out something else. And there was this one for an early software startup that was based in government. They were looking for someone to run sales and marketing. And so I threw my hat in the ring, didn't really think anything of it. I got a call a few days later and got an interview set up. So I had 2 or 3 rounds of interviews with these guys. I had to pitch ideas. I had to show them what I would do. And this is I had a few experiences with like entrepreneurship in the past with like a t-shirt company, which I feel like everyone does at some point. I had done like a lot of lawn mowing back in my hometown and stuff, which was an awesome cash flow business, but that's, not much marketing or anything involved, especially in Perry, Oklahoma. So I just kind of like threw ideas out there, and they ended up liking what I had to say. And so I started working for this software startup. Well, long story short, I did sales and marketing for them for a while, but I made some connections through that software startup that actually ended up referring me to run sales and marketing for a group of brands in the supplement space in like closer to my senior year. So like very end of college.
Mm-hmm.
These guys wanted me to come in. They had like 8 brands and they wanted me to come in and run sales and marketing for them because they just had no idea how to do it. Especially heading into COVID, which is kind of the time frame it was, and they had no idea how to actually bring customers in. They had been working with huge wholesale accounts at that point that were kind of just like pulling business from them, and they saw a downtrend that they wanted help with. I came in there, started to help them with like getting social media off the ground, and started getting, implementing different ideas and new labels and new lines and things like that. And for some, we had worked out a deal with Prevention Magazine, which you've probably heard of Prevention Magazine. It's for like an older generation, but like their average is like women like 65 plus, I think, that reads Prevention Magazine. And we did like a CBD deal with them. Prevention Magazine is owned by Hearst Publications, which is like the largest like marketing company and magazine arm. Like they own like 8 of the top 10 magazines in the world, I think Hearst Publications does. Men's Health is also owned by them. Men's Health and Runner's World both approached us to do a supplement line for them specifically. And the guys that I was working with and that owned the company had no idea what they were talking about when it came to health and fitness. So they asked me to sit in on a call with Men's Health to help them just understand what they're even talking about, because they wanted protein and creatine and things like that. And this story is getting kind of long-winded, so I apologize, but it kind of helps to round everything out. Anyways, we're sitting on this call and we're joined by the director of fitness at Men's Health Magazine. And he starts to kind of talk about what he's wanting. He starts to ask questions about our capabilities, and he starts getting into the creatines and the proteins and the wheys and the caseins and all those things. And the guy, they didn't know what he was talking about. I knew, because I'd been in bodybuilding for a little while. So it just ends up being on this call where I'm, a 21-year-old at that point. And I'm talking to it's just pretty much me, all these important people on this call. They're all millionaires, it's just me and like the director of fitness for Men's Health Magazine, like spitballing back and forth on products. And, he's wanting a men's health like line. And I'm like, I don't know if that's going to sell well, especially not with my generation. I think if we would do better if it was kind of like a spinoff, like by Men's Health or something. And he really liked that idea. And we were going to spitball some names and everything. And then he was like, well, we really want to get into creatine. And we want to do like a specific form of creatine, which was HCl. But he was like, people just hate creatine and how it tastes. And I was like, yes, it tastes terrible, especially if you get like a more pure form of it. But he was like, it'd be really cool if we could do, some other type of delivery system. And we had a really robust manufacturing portion of it that we were doing gummies, like CBD gummies and stuff like that. And so I was like, well, what if we could work creatine into a gummy? Would you be interested in that? And he, like, you could see everybody just kind of like, oh shit, like that's actually a really good idea. And so, with those large corporate companies and everything, it takes a long time to get something like that done. So we were looking at like an 18-month rollout or something. We get off the call, and the guys, the really wealthy, successful guys that ran the company that I was working for, they were like, hey, he really got excited when you brought that up. Like, what would it take to do something like that? And so we started playing with formulations, and we started doing our own brand of creatine gummy. Like we were just going to go ahead and roll it out because they were taking a long time. So we came up with the concept of Revive Gummies, which I spearheaded. I ran the entire thing. I was over all of it. I kind of stepped a little bit out of, we hired somebody else to kind of do the marketing on the other brands. And I kind of ran with Revive Gummies as like my baby. And that was like the kind of the first of, there was one other company that I know of after we started it that I guess was already kind of doing some sort of a creatine gummy. And of course we had to run in with them as far as, all the legal stuff. Now, after we did that and we ran tens of thousands of dollars in ads, and we were in, I think, 30 stores with talks with like much bigger chains, but we just could not keep up with fulfillment for whatever reason. the guys that I was working with just would not scale fulfillment, even though we had kind of this product that worked. It was very hard D2C because direct to consumer, that is, because they're gummies, so they can melt. So like if it's in the heat of summer, you've got to ship it in a freezer box with dry ice, and that costs an extra $13 or $14 per unit. So that made it really tough. But long story short, we went and I moved to Dallas, and I was still running the brand and everything. We were seeing some pretty good growth and all of that, and just weird things started happening with that relationship that I won't kind of get into, which is kind of when you and I met. And it ended up just being like we ended up having to go our separate ways because some things were just happening that I found out about, and that, one of the guys kind of was just like, hey, this is kind of where we're at, and I think this is where we're going to stay, and we can either just keep letting this thing be handicapped by our production capacity and our ability to sell and all that type of stuff, or we can just cut it loose. And so it got cut loose, and I still get inquiries all the time about where can I buy them and where can I find them and why aren't they in my store anymore and stuff like that. And it's something that I think could have been really big because of the way that we approached it and marketed it and everything, but it ended up falling flat on its face because of a lack of leadership, really, in terms of me and them being on the same line and same frame of thought as far as how should finances be allocated, what should happen with the inventory and the production, what type of capacity do we need to push for, and just didn't work out. And that's one of the biggest things that I still think about, I think, as far as mistakes wise, that I could have done differently or handled differently, that maybe should have been a pride thing or an ego thing that I should have set aside and worked on better strategies with that, because it had a lot of potential, and I'll never know now. It's something I always think about.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I have kind of the same story. Those that don't know, so I was a co-founder of Rye Supplements, and 1 year into it, I launched coffee like 2 weeks later. And so I'm trying to run two businesses at the same time, which obviously are not making a profit, because any new business doesn't make a profit from a product. So I was still doing like some agency work and doing sales calls for other coaches inside this marketing agency, if you would. And being that all my eggs were in different baskets and not in one, as a partner, they obviously want you bought in fully to one thing, right? And so I basically said no. Like, I'm not going to give you everything. So because I still need to make a living. Right? I still got to pay my bills. Everyone else had other incomes that didn't require that amount of time needed. So I basically opted to sell my portion of the company. And unfortunately for me, I missed out on something that would retire me in a big way. And like, we're talking high 8 figures, if not, my portion would be worth maybe 9 figures at this point. And it's like, man, like, what an opportunity, because I believed in myself more than I think I did the company as a whole. And I figured, well, I can make it work on my own. So I basically was like, it's better to own 100% of something than a percentage of something else. And that's the mentality which I took.
Yeah.
And there's pluses and minuses, pros and cons to everything, right? Obviously, the money would have been amazing, but at the same time, the things that I learned and the person I've essentially been developed, having to go through doing everything on my own to some degree, has been worth it. But we always look back and we go, but what about the what if?
Yeah.
What if I had stayed with it? What if I had went all in on this idea? And the truth is that it wasn't my idea to begin with. I was the middleman between a few of the different parties that started the company, and friends with them and whatnot, and help formulate and create some of the product ideas that we started with. And obviously now it's completely changed. in the sense of where it's at and keeping up with the market and all these different things, right? So it is funny to look back and the choices that you make, and you can't obviously dread on them, right? You got to keep pushing, and looking back, I'm glad I made the decision that I did, as I'm sure that you do as well.
Yep.
But yeah, so what was your biggest takeaway from that entire experience?
Yeah. I'm a firm believer, and I honestly I got some of this idea. You've helped me refine it, because you talk a lot about. I heard you say one time that whenever you go to events, you're usually looking for that like one sentence. And I
Mm,
think that's kind of the premise of the name of this podcast, right? Is you're looking for that one sentence that you can kind of take and run with. And that makes the ticket worth it, right? Like that's what we've always talked about. That makes the weekend worth it. That makes the cost, the stay, like everything worth it. So I've tried to look at that as like this, approach that in other areas of life too. So like you're talking about with that particular, with Revive Gummies in particular, I learned a lot of things as far as like trademarks and um, competition and ceases and desists and all of those things, because we did all those things, and I had never been on like the legal side of companies like that.
mhm,
But my biggest takeaway, I think, is that if you are going to be in some sort of a partnership, or any type of a leadership role within a company, you have to be on the exact same page as the
mm,
other people involved.
mm,
Especially in my situation, I was running the company, but I had no control because I just didn't feel like I had the place to ask over how finances should be allocated, right? What type of capacity in the warehouses should be dedicated to my particular brand and my particular, um, you know, allocation, as far as like how much storage should we have, how much production capacity should we have, how much ingredients should be purchased for us specifically and not be used on other projects or other brands, or to fund other brands inside of the warehouses. So it all came down to me not being on the same page as the guys who owned it, who
mm,
all obviously ultimately have the say in what happens.
mhm.
And because of that, it grew some spite, it grew some friction in the relationships, and
Yeah.
it ended up killing what could have been a really successful big company that was in the CPG space, similar to Rise, and people have to buy every single month, and your margins might not be as big, but that your volumes are a lot higher, and stuff like that. And so it was really fun to get to grow it, but the downfall ultimately was just we weren't on the same page,
Mm,
and we never took the time to get there. And then
mm,
by the time that everyone realized like that's what had happened, it was too late, and we had to all go our separate ways.
yeah. Let's talk about TikTok.
Okay, let's do it.
Today they voted. It passed the House. Now it goes to the Senate.
Yep.
What is your thoughts on why the government wants to ban it?
I don't. I, I've heard through like I guess Joe Rogan on one of his episodes or something. He like went into the terms and conditions of TikTok and literally read them for like several hours. Um, and there's a lot of like really concerning things in the terms and conditions, as far as like they can access your microphone whenever, they can access your camera whenever. They're not required to have you have the app open or even running in the background. Like it's just they can just do that. They can see a lot of like your entire camera roll. Obviously, they can see anything else that you're really doing on your device just from having TikTok. I think their justification is so that they can give you a better timeline, and for you page and algorithm and everything. But there's those privacy concerns because it's ultimately owned by China. And so the concern is that like they might not care what you're doing on TikTok, they might not care what I'm doing on TikTok, but there's a senator's niece is on TikTok, and whenever it's detected that she's near her uncle, then all of a sudden all those things are being utilized to get in specific rooms or find out specific data about family members and people like that. So that's kind of the concern from what I gather. But yeah, it things like this have happened in the past. TikTok's banned from a lot of like college campuses, which is crazy. But the House passed it today. Biden announced last week that if that comes to his desk, then he's going to approve it and sign it through. Now, the funny thing is that apparently the last time that this all happened, Trump was kind of spearheading it and Biden reversed it. So this being an election year, I don't know if it's the opposite's going to happen, right? Like it gets passed or whatever, and then it automatically gets undone by whoever ends up taking office. Trump obviously is the contender, but it'll be really interesting to see what happens. And it'll be big for us. We were just talking about ads ideas for TikTok and everything, but it's going to be really interesting to see how this unfolds, because this is the furthest that an initiative like this with TikTok in particular has gotten. But the idea is that ByteDance, the parent company, will have to either sell TikTok to a US subsidiary, like somebody in the US, like a tech company here, and they will then run it in the US. ByteDance can still run it in China or wherever else they want to run it. But somebody in the US needs to own the US platform, I guess, and servers for TikTok to solidify that safety is the idea, I think. And they'll have, if it passes again, then in the Senate, they'll have 6 months to offload it or completely get it banned from all US devices.
So I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for a second.
Let's do it.
I think that they want China, right? Privacy, yeah, get that, cool.
Yep.
But what's the real power play, in my opinion? Again, my opinion. If you sell it to somebody like Facebook, which I don't think you can do because that becomes now a monopoly.
Huge monopoly, yeah.
So you have to sell it to another tech provider, which the government then has to approve, which means that it's going to be on whatever party side that they want, which means now they can control what's actually put out there and what's deemed as fake news.
Yep.
And right now, TikTok is the only platform where both parties are able to have their videos seen equally.
Yeah.
And that's not the case on Instagram nor Facebook, because they're run by more of a Democratic Party. And this isn't about a this side or that side. I think it's really about a control side. And I'd be honest, I don't care what party makes it happen. They would want Democratic, I think, would want a Democratic company to buy it. I think Republican would want a Republican to buy it, so that it does favor heavily in being biased in the information which is put out.
Yeah.
Or deemed as fake news, right? So here's the other piece I think interesting. Let's talk about Facebook in this nature, because they're probably chomping at the bit to some degree, because they would just destroy the competitive space, which means all that TikTok ad money would then have to be redirected back to Meta, which means that their stocks would probably increase tremendously.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think there's going to be a small window to where Instagram and Facebook ads are going to be super, super cheap, like in 2020. And then they're going to become crazy expensive because Facebook realizes how much money is coming in. And then they're going to jack the price up of all the bidding platform. And I think that your current Instagram, Facebook ads are going to be even more expensive than what they currently are.
Yeah.
Because it's if they do not touch anything, it's simply a supply and demand. That many more people and that much more money coming into the platform, which means that it's going to be a more expensive bidding space, which means anybody that's not the elite is going to pay out the ass to have those ads on the platform. Theories, but they make sense to me.
Yeah. No, they make total sense. And it is, I mean, not financial advice, but I theoretically bought some Facebook stock this week because of that exact reason, right? It's if this goes through and if this happens, then that's ultimately where the audience is probably going to fall, is Reels, Instagram Reels, right, and Facebook Reels. And so it's going to be very, very interesting to see where things shake out. I don't I don't see how. I understand the privacy concerns. I understand all of that stuff, but I don't see how a company doesn't just get handed that platform and then do whatever. Like it doesn't stay the same thing,
No.
and TikTok has been in the forefront of innovating the social sphere for 3 years now. They came out with, their videos, forced Instagram and Facebook to keep up and do their videos. Their TikTok shop is like the craziest thing. Like kids are just making tens of thousands of dollars on TikTok shop promoting products and showing videos of products that they maybe have ever even touched themselves with their own hands.
Mm-hmm.
Like tens of thousands of dollars a month from doing that. Addie and my sister and her boyfriend, they do TikTok shop stuff all the time for all these different brands. And Instagram is starting to really push add products to your posts. So I think Instagram's going to come out with an equivalent here soon as well. They started with a shop on the platform, but they didn't think about it from a creator's perspective like TikTok did, where TikTok actually enabled, instead of Instagram trying to just run more money through the platform and collecting a percentage of that for them, they didn't think about how it would affect the creators. And so TikTok did it with the creator in mind, and the companies just get to push more volume, which is genius. Right. And so I think that that's going to be a huge thing that Instagram and Facebook try to roll out soon as well, is the Instagram or Meta shop equivalent, whatever that ends up being. But I don't know. It's going to be really interesting but having your own database is going to be more important now than ever, especially if the majority of your following is on TikTok. We talked about it last week with Instagram and Facebook having some downtime, right, on Wednesday of last week or whenever that was, when all that shut down and everyone panicked. If you have an email list of 10,000 or 20,000 or even 1,000 or 5,000 people, you're not really panicking that bad because you have all your buyers within reach and you can reach out to them. But if you have 1 million people on TikTok and 0 email addresses, you're cut off from your entire customer base.
You went from making $30,000 a month to 0.
Literally. Yeah. So if your income's built on TikTok shop and built on, selling those series that you can sell on TikTok's platform,
or just relying on your reach from your posts.
Yeah, because you get paid in the creator program. So that your lifeline is done.
I think that this is really if it does go through, it's going to create a massive wave of tightness across the board for a lot of people, because I would have to assume that there are millions of Americans that rely on TikTok for their income.
Oh yeah.
This is going to put millions of people out of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big deal. So not only is the person that has the account going to take the hit, but so are every single business that relies on those people to help them continue to grow and sell. So what's going to happen? Amazon is going to get a giant spike in sales. Instagram and Facebook are going to get a giant spike in sales. So by really controlling the market, that's hey, we're just going to shut down Google. It's you're going to what?
Yeah.
How that's destroying business owners. And people don't see that because they see it as it's just social media. And no, it's not. This is today's yellow pages. This is today's billboards. And so it's going to be catastrophic to millions of people's lives if this deal isn't essentially panned out. And so I'm really curious to see, I guess my question to you is do you think they'll sell?
I don't know, because the question then becomes, if they sell, does whoever bought it, do they have any obligation to keep the creators, I guess, involved at all? Because it's obviously they can't sell. You wouldn't think, right? We know there's some big corruption going on if they sold to Meta for whatever reason, but you wouldn't think they could sell to Meta. But let's say that some someone gets a hold of it and changes the algorithm because they think that there's a problem in the algorithm, right? And so all of a sudden that new creators can't get discovered as easily, right? And only the top creators are getting rewarded. And so people quit trying on TikTok because they can't get as much reach as they used to be able to. The possibility of you getting viral was not, and being niched is not near as high.
Mhm.
Like, who's to say someone doesn't jump in there and kill the platform essentially, or someone looks at their numbers that TikTok Shop's doing because they're doing all these coupons and everything to get mass adoption as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
They look at it and be like, their profit margin's 1%, right? Or maybe they lost some money because they're giving so many credits out. This is a stupid initiative. Like, let's just shut off TikTok Shop. When in reality, like, they're doing all of that to gather pennies per order, and get mass adoption as quickly as possible so that they end up being the Amazon in the future, So that's my concern too. Even if they do sell, that would be my concern if I relied on TikTok, is what does that next version of TikTok even look like? Because it's not going to stay the exact same, because it's not going to be run by the same people.
Yeah. And I also think it's interesting too, because it's like, so who's going to say like the price?
Yeah.
You have to sell it, and I'm the only buyer, and I'm only going to pay you this much. So you get to pay and lose what it's actually worth, or make no money. Your choice. It's like, man, you're like, for a country that believes in freedom, it's not a very free deal you're giving the people.
Yeah.
Because here's the truth. You get to choose whether you want the platform or not. It is an option. Just like cigarettes. It's a choice. So you're more concerned about somebody hearing a conversation than actually saving somebody's life. That's an interesting concept there, government. But at the same time, who am I to say to stop selling cigarettes because you have the freedom to do so? Right? And that's where I think a lot of people, and this is really what boils down to, I think, either party, is who defines where the line is. You talk about abortion. It's like, well, where does life start? Does it start at conception, or does it start at birth?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the line? The argument's always been the fucking line. In every disagreement, it's the line. Who gets to draw it? Well, I think the line should be here. Well, I think it should be here. And this also is going to fall into the category, well, who gets to draw the line? And from a place of freedom, it's like, that's tough. How do you navigate that in an appropriate manner?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's interesting.
I don't know if there is a good answer, really.
And I think no matter what happens, there's going to be big changes. And I think you really nailed it on the head there.
Yes, absolutely.
Is that if you don't have your data and you don't own your data and somebody else does, you're going to wish you did. You were going to wish you did. Because Instagram could also shut down tomorrow too. And what would happen then?
Yeah.
Like, it would destroy, like, if Instagram shut down, it would destroy, in my opinion, %100 of online businesses, which would probably make up a vast majority of jobs. Because, I mean, what company, I mean, retail companies, right? So what would stay are retail locations, the trickle-down effects. Retail is the only job you can have now, which means that retail spaces are going to spike through the roof, and your rent for the buildings is going to be astronomical. Amazon is going to become not only the biggest powerhouse, but then uncatchable, undeniable, and be able to control everything like they already don't. And because what happens is that when somebody makes a switch, people are going to capitalize on that. Right? It's called price gouging. Some people call it price gouging. Some people call it supply and demand.
Yeah,
Where do you draw the line?
exactly.
So I think it's a really interesting concept and see how it's going to pan out, because I know it's going to be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, it is. It is. But again, that's the importance of using something like AR to collect emails and phone numbers, and even if you're just trading those things for, people, you're having people trade those things for your free thing, right? It could be more exclusive content. It could be a lead magnet of some sort. It could be a course or a low ticket product. You just have to build up your own database that you own, of customers or potential customers, because we are really at the mercy of all these companies, and that's just the reality of it. And so if you don't take action in building up your own database, you will always have that risk of everything being gone tomorrow, which is terrifying.
Very, even for us. I don't know whether this TikTok deal is going to help us or hurt us. I don't know if it's going to be a massive win or a massive pitfall. I don't know what to expect.
Yep.
I don't know that I'm prepared for it either, in either way, because there's so much unknowns.
Yeah.
So, dude, man, I appreciate you coming on, discussing a little bit of politics with me today, a little bit of TikTok, a little bit of story. But man, I appreciate you, all the hard work you put in, the service in which you provide for the clients. More importantly, the friend you are to me. Man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, brother. I love you.
Likewise, brother. Love you.
My biggest takeaway podcast